the buyer has to take everything on trust. So everything that you do leading up to that sale has to be focused on that. And if you build your practice sale, package with that in mind, then you can create something that will answer all of the questions instead of just creating new ones.
Hello and welcome to the Remarkable CEO Podcast, a show dedicated to chiropractors who want to transform their job into a business so that they can have a remarkable practice as part of a remarkable life, not instead of one. With your hosts, Dr. Pete Camiolo and Dr. Stephen Franson.
What's up, Remarkables? Hey, it's Dr. Stephen Franson here, and I would just want to welcome you and a special guest to another episode of the Remarkable CEO Podcast. Say hi to Crystal Meisenheimer from Progressive Practice Sales. What's up, Crystal?
Hey, so good to be here. Thanks for having me.
We're psyched to have you here. So we're going to continue the conversation that we've started here around exiting, right? So setting up your business for a successful exit. And in the remarkable world, the remarkable exit is one that's graceful and profitable, right? We want to set up a win-win-win-win-win, right? So all the way around. So if you've been listening to the podcast, you've heard us describe this exit program that we've created, or an exit process that is in essence 4 stages, right? There's 4 stages to the remarkable exit. The first stage is all about strategy, right? So getting your head around, putting together a plan, what's your strategy for exiting. The second stage is readiness, where you're getting yourself as the seller and your business and your practice together ready for sale. There's a lot of detail. There's a lot of due diligence to ready all the way down to the documentation, get everything ready for the buyer who's interested in buying your business. That's the readiness stage. And then, of course, there's go to market. It's time to sell this business, especially if you're looking for an external buyer, right? So you go to market, you take this business or your practice to the marketplace. And then the fourth and final stage, which is the transaction, right? So the transactional stage, which is there's an exchange of the papers, right? So the documents, the contracts, and the money, right? So we want to make sure that all of this is done gracefully and profitably, as we like to say, Crystal. So I've brought you in as one of our trusted partners, one of our remarkable experts, specifically in the space of practice, sales, and brokering, right? So can you speak to us a little bit about what you guys do over at Progressive Practice Sales? Give us some insight, because for a lot of people, this is a brand new conversation. In fact, it's something that our profession just really never talks about. And as you know, usually to the dismay of the person who is trying to sell their business, like there's just no information out there. People don't know what their expectation should be, how to even approach this thing. And that's the purpose of this series of episodes.
Yeah, definitely. And, my husband and I founded this brokerage because when we went through the sale process, we felt completely unsupported. So I definitely understand where doctors are coming from. You don't go to chiropractic school because you want to be a CPA, but, you need to have that level of understanding to have a successful business sale. So you really do need to have someone who can come in and provide that support to have the optimal outcomes. So I always welcome these educational conversations around it, because it's true. Most doctors come to us, even really successful doctors, having really never had the time or energy or headspace to devote to this. And, it's to their detriment.
So good. Yeah. And, I think every business that I've ever created was always just scratching my own itch, right? So because as a chiropractor, my wife and I went through the same thing, man, there was nobody there to teach us how to exit our business, how to sell our practice. As we launched the Remarkable Practice as a coaching business, there was a season of my life where I felt like I was riding 2 horses, and I'm like, oh my gosh, this coaching business has just taken off like crazy. And I had already done my 22, 23 years of just optimizing and maxing out our practice. I was ready to scale and just help doctors recreate what we had done, but there was no one there that was having this exit conversation, or like, hey, here's how you do this. At least no one that I could find. So, man, that's a gap that we're trying to fill here with these types of conversations, also with the Remarkable Exit program. So thank you so much for giving us your time and your expertise. Is it okay if we just make this real academic and I just ask you some questions?
Yes.
Right. All right. So your expertise is in as a practice brokerage. So the vision I have in my head of that is that you guys have this office. you have this fantastic website that I know about, and I'm kind of wink, wink as I say this, and you have a bunch of experts in there, and their job is to help doctors who are interested in selling their practices find the right buyer, somebody who can come in and, they can get the best sale price for it, and setting up a win-win-win for everybody involved, right? That's always our objective. So am I close? I mean, is that in essence that what a brokerage does?
That is the traditional view of a broker, is that they're sort of, for a business, of this size, you can get into much bigger businesses and then you kind of switch models. But traditionally, business brokerage for, businesses that are selling under, say, $5 million, you have a broker who comes in as a matchmaker. And what we discovered both in our own sales and as we built this brokerage is that really that's not really enough, because chiropractic is uniquely complex. You've got all these techniques and all of these models and philosophies and modalities, and then you have these buyers and sellers who this is not their area of expertise whatsoever. So everybody needs a lot of support, and there's a lot of variables. And so what we realized early on was that we really needed to create something a lot more full service that really helped to guide and structure the sale from start to finish. That's what's required in this space. And without that, you really have a much lower success rate.
Okay, beautiful. Thank you for that. So give us the sort of high level stepwise approach when, a doctor's considering selling their practice, and, they've decided, okay, so the time is now. I want to start considering this, looking at this. What are some of the things that they need to start thinking about to, as we say, increase their readiness for the sale of their business? Like, where do you start? What are the first 1, 2, 3, 4 steps to get your practice ready for sale?
Yeah, that's a great question. So a lot of people will approach a practice sale and they'll think, okay, this is what I want to do next. So this is the amount that I need to make in my sale. And that is smart. You do need to know if you're financially ready to sell your practice, but just because that's your need doesn't mean that that's what the market will sustain. With chiropractic sales, especially, because of some specific variables with chiropractors that we can dive into if you want to. The vast majority of these sales, about 80% of them right now, are funded through the Small Business Administration lending program. And so they really set the pricing and the sales structure for it. And so, even if you think, okay, well, I'm willing to have a longer sales cycle, I'm willing to wait, you're not going to be able to necessarily achieve a sale price above and beyond what that market will sustain, because it's so defined by what the SBA will lend on it. And so you do need to understand your personal number, but you also really need to understand what your practice will justify so that you can make the appropriate plans. Because what we see is when people enter a practice sale and they're really basing their numbers on their hopes and not really, the actual market value, the practice will stay on the market for a longer time than needed. The buyers start to, notice that this is sort of lingering. So they start to think there's something wrong with the practice. And then the doctor just gets worn out. They get disheartened by the lack of interest, and the practice inevitably declines. So I think that really understanding not only your own financial goals, but where the practice value is the most important first step. And ideally, that would happen a few years before you were really ready to make a move. That way you can optimize what you do with that information, because there's some pretty easy levers to move in a lot of cases to improve the value that you can get at closing.
So much there. So here's what my takeaway. So, first and foremost, you have to start with your own perspective, right? To be able to say, like, I like to say, what do you want? What do you want to achieve? Like, what are your priorities? What's the most important to you? Because people show up to us and they've got different levels of drivers, right? So it's like, I want to get the highest asking price and keep the most amount of money, period, right? So it's a money thing, which is awesome, right? So it's like the most important thing to me is I get the highest price, and I get to, set it up in such a way where I get to mitigate some of the tax exposure, and I get to keep as much of the profit as possible. Others are like, what's most important to me is legacy. I want to make sure that my patients, my people, my team, that everybody is in the right hands, and that the person that takes over my work and continues the work of my life's work, so to speak, right? So there's a legacy. Other people, it's like time, like this needs to happen right away, right? So there's a lot of like considerations around like, what are your drivers? Like what's most important to you? And very often those three levers will compete with one another, right? Just the three that I listed, right? So first, that's that place. And if it is the money place, regardless of whether that's the number one priority or not, what is that number, right? So get a sense of what that number is. Now, we both know there's a trail of tears here, right? So there's the number that the seller thinks their business, their baby, right? Their baby is worth, because they know how much blood, sweat, tears, love, passion, purpose, and care has gone into creating this thing, right? So there's, there's a number that is almost invariably inflated, right? So they make assumptions and fantasies around what their business is worth and what people will be lining up to pay for it, right? So you can hear my sarcasm, but forgive me, I'm from New England. That's my first language, right? So it can be a really hard thing for a doctor to hear that actually there's an equation, there's an algorithm, and there are some considerations, right? So you've named a couple of them, right? So there is, what will the market bear? In other words, look around, there's going to be other comps, right? Just like you're selling a home in a town, right? So there's going to be comp models, comparisons, right? So to what you're selling, right? So there'll be trends. There's also going to be how the financing happens. Like you said, if it's a SBA, they're going to go back 3 years, right? 36 months of finances. They're going to look at the historical trending, financial trending of the business, right? So, and they have a very clear cut and dry equation that they're going to use to arrive at what is considered a bankable deal. Like what they would actually say, yes, we'll clear you for this amount of money, almost like you're going to buy a house or buy a car. They're going to say, this is the amount of money you qualify for, so to speak, for this particular house or this particular car, right? So it becomes very transactional very quickly, right? So we go from this relational, emotional consideration to this highly transactional environment where no one cares, and that can be super harsh, right? So what's been your experience with that? Because I know you, like me, sometimes have to look at people and be like, are you sitting down right now? Or can we talk? Right. So, and it's that come to Jesus moment that can be pretty, uncomfortable.
Oh, it's heartbreaking. It really is, because I understand, having been, a business owner myself for decades. I totally know what it is to put all of that into a business, only to get to the other side of it and see that, a lot of the value that comes from that business you've captured over the years, and that there's only a certain amount of transferable value for people coming in. And the reason why that's the case in chiropractic is because it has limits to how big you can scale it. It has limits to how transferable that profit is. And, the lenders and the buyers don't look at that and say, okay, that has an equivalent value to something like a technology company, that has an infinite ability to scale and expand. So it is really tough. And so what we like to talk to doctors about when they're thinking about selling their practice is it can't just be about the money. If it's just about the money, then you probably need something to roll that money into, to invest it, to make it grow, because this is not alone going to get you, in most cases, a full retirement. There are people who have built really nice, large practices, and there's some models that can be used for a sale that can create some continued income as well. But for the vast majority of doctors, it's got to be more than just that money. So it has to be that there's something that you're moving on to that you're really excited about, as well as the actual sale amount, because the multiples in any business sale, there is statement of the risk of the transferable nature of the income. And when you look at something that's so hands-on as chiropractic is, there's just limitations to that.
That's exactly right. Well, you're using some of my favorite words, right? So in the Remarkable Practice, we differentiate having a job from having a business by saying businesses they're scalable, they're durable, and they're transferable, right? So scalable means that you can give more, love more, serve more, make a bigger impact and a bigger income, but it doesn't have to all be done by you, right? You learn how to leverage like other people, whether that's team members, associate doctors, technology, systems, communications, et cetera, right? So like you said, you're capturing some of the value of owning a business all along, right? Through your scalability. Durability means you can give more, love more, serve more, make a bigger impact and a bigger income, even in your absence, right? So this suggests that you can get a handle on your schedule, get your weekends back, maybe take vacations even, right? So maybe have multiple locations, et cetera. That implies being able to capture value in your absence. That's the gold standard, the remarkable standard for having a business, right? And then eventually, like you said, transferable value, meaning that you've created an asset, right? So you've created an asset that people will compete to buy if you created it properly, right? So, you talked about valuation, and I'm not going to paint you into any corners around giving numbers around multiples, but it's an important thing to understand is like, there is a customary way to arrive at the value of a business, not just a chiropractic office, right? So the variable is the multiple, right? So when you have some type of sales multiple times what's called owner's discretionary earnings or seller's discretionary earnings, right? SDE. Is that how you guys is that the framework that you use to value a business?
It is when we're looking at an owner-operated transfer. Yeah, definitely. And then as you get into an opportunity where an investor could be a good fit as a buyer, then we start looking at EBITDA, which is defined a little bit differently when you're thinking about calculating profit. But yes, it's always going to be a profit benchmark multiplied by that multiplier that is the statement of risk and transferability.
That's right. So when we talked about sales inside of the Remarkable Exit program, we described this internal sales and external sales, right? So an internal sale would be you're selling it to somebody inside your business, right? That's already inside your business. Think another doctor or potentially an associate doctor, whatever, right? So that's an internal sale. An external sale would be if you're going outside of the practice, and we categorize them as either Wall Street or Main Street sales, right? So Main Street would be doctor selling to another doctor, right? So the traditional, very typical, usual and customary way doctors buy other doctors' practices. You made a hint there there are some Wall Street opportunities that have come about that's really sexy and interesting, right? So without over promising and under delivering here, people have to recognize that this is an exciting time, and I think it's really good for chiropractic, right? To be recognized, when private equity starts loving chiropractic and seeing that you can get a stronger multiple, that's a strategic purchase, right? That's a strategic buyer who's showing up and saying, listen, I'm going to actually invest in the future of this practice versus the historical valuation, which is typically DC to DC. Am I right? Am I thinking there is like, there are some opportunities out there today that, if you want to learn more about that runway, right, there's an opportunity with corporate roll-ups. How much of that are you seeing in the field today?
We're definitely seeing a lot of interest. It has tapered off a little bit in the latter half of 2022, as I think, just some of the economic uncertainty and whatnot. But we still talk to new investors on a monthly basis. Before it was a weekly basis. So there's still a lot of activity. I think that what doctors need to understand is that it's fairly new for most of these investors to be exploring chiropractic, and they do not have a great understanding of what chiropractic is and the unique aspects of it. And so we get a lot of people that are really excited about chiropractic opportunities. And then as we start to delve into that conversation, they get overwhelmed really fast. And just the number of variables is a lot. So there are definitely opportunities. There are also, I think, a lot of opportunities to put yourself at risk with a group that maybe is not as reputable. I've heard doctors tell me that they've spent tens of thousands of dollars on CPA fees, legal fees, to try and put together what these groups need, and then ultimately never be able to sell to them because they're still so new. So there are certainly established groups, there are certainly opportunities, but there's also a lot of investors that are just dipping their toes in, and that just creates a situation where I think doctors have a lot more to lose, being the people who are not, again, the business experts here. And so, it sounds very good when they approach you. Certainly the multiples can sound much better, but, a lot of those ultimately may not pan out because they're really just exploratory.
Yeah, it's such a great point. I mean, to go in and just pump the brakes on your expectations, right? So to go in, whenever we're high emotion, we're low logic, right? So you always want to be able to just kind of check your emotional state and don't get attached, right? So at the end of the day, you have to have the chops to get into something like that. So you've got to have the business chops and the risk tolerance, really the high entrepreneurial risk tolerance to say, listen, I understand that I might see a 3 or 4 times more multiplier for the business. So it's worth the long slog to me. It's worth the risk. It's worth the stress associated with it. And I'll do the homework and the diligence to, to meet the mark, because I would like to be able to experience that sexier exit. But like you said, it's just not for everyone. So, just keep that in mind, because as the, you see these ebbs and flows with the economic uncertainty with activity. Now that we're on the other side of the midterms, you're going to see more interest dumping back out into private equity as dry powder comes off the sidelines. When, it's always around elections. Everybody knows that with the every 2-year election cycle, that 3 to 6 months before an election, you see the money getting pulled back. So now just pay attention, but keep your wits about you and lead with your head, not your heart, when it comes to selling your business. So let's talk about pitfalls. Like, what do you see? Where do people misstep when they're coming to you, like some false expectations, or they've got blind spots, or, you have those other difficult questions or conversations with people when not just about the value of their business, but what does it really take to sell a business?
Yeah, I think that the biggest thing that people don't realize when they start this process is how much preparation it takes to do this well. The amount of just data that goes into a business sale, much less a chiropractic sale, it's significant, because these people are investing a lot of money in a practice. Your business is not really big enough to provide the supportive infrastructure for a real thorough due diligence. If they were buying a business that was $5 million, $10 million, there would just be more to it. There would be different types of accounting. There would be different types of record keeping. You'd have, a whole level of middle management, more than likely, that would be able to provide supportive information. Most of that's not going to be there in a chiropractic practice, even as you get up into the really big ones. And so the buyer has to take everything on trust. So everything that you do leading up to that sale has to be focused on that. And if you build your practice sale, package with that in mind, then you can create something that will answer all of the questions instead of just creating new ones. If you're not intentional, you almost create something that's not sellable, because the questions, they just create so many red flags that, the buyers, they just don't feel safe. And because there's not a way to verify, their feelings about this are actually very, very important.
That's right. It's brilliant what you're describing. We call that readiness, right? So to make sure that you have a level of readiness for exit, like an exit readiness, where you feel like, okay, so we have our ducks in a row, if you will, right? So it's not just an emotional readiness, or my practice itself is, you wouldn't believe how great my business is. You should totally buy it. My practice is awesome. My patients are awesome, et cetera, right? So it's actually something that can be documented. So I love that. So last question I have for you is, you guys have sold a lot of practices over the years, and you get to see commonalities, right? So what are some of the traits, like what makes a practice more sellable, right? So what are some of the things that somebody could actually have influence over other than location, right? So, and I don't mean like location in where are you in town in the strip mall, I'm talking about, not just like what state you're in or what region of the world you are in or what have you. What makes a business much more attractive and sellable? And think about the listener right now from a place of actionable. Like, what would be actionable? What can I do to increase the what do they call it? The curbside value of the house, or the curb appeal of the house? Like, what could you do that for the practice?
Yeah, that's a great question. There's several drivers that really move practice value and salability, and one of them is the profit. Now, everything that I say, though, it's going to be a double-edged sword. There's a good side, but you can also take it to a level that actually hurts the sale. So from a profit standpoint, the more profit that you have, the higher multiple you can get, the more interested buyers, the investors start to enter the space. Even smaller investors, it could be someone more regionally based, so a doctor who's looking to expand a group, they often will have, a strategic interest that will allow them to invest a little bit more. But you still want to keep the income really transferable as you start to build out into some of these really niche specialties, additional service lines and whatnot. Sometimes the business can get so complicated that it will take some buyers immediately out of the equation.
Yes.
And that's frustrating, because when you own a practice, the riches are in the niches. You want to specialize you want to differentiate yourself from the competition, you want to do things like that. But when you go to sell, sometimes people just say, oh my gosh, you've got 18 different revenue lines here. That's a lot to manage. I'm not sure that I can bite that off. Or as an investor, I don't know that I can put someone in here who can manage it that doesn't have an owner mentality. So that's so there's always some give and take on this, but that would certainly be one area. I would also really think about the transferability of what you're putting together. So, from a perspective of marketing, all of the doctors that we talk to, 99% of them will say, well, I don't have to do marketing anymore. I've established such a great reputation in my community. I don't have to pay for that. That's a huge benefit for the buyer because all the new patients come in through referrals. Well, will the patients refer to the new buyer? Maybe. If your practice is all associate doctors that are staying, yep, they probably will. That's pretty awesome. If they're all referring because they love you, because you've been taking care of them for 25 years, then the buyer's not necessarily going to think that that's an automatic transfer. So, you want to sort of diversify the way that you're doing something so that you're capitalizing on your strengths, but you're also building an infrastructure that creates it more as more transferable for someone else to step in.
That's great wisdom. Great wisdom. So what I took away from that was how important it is to look at the quality of the business from a systems perspective, whether we're talking about marketing and attraction, your conversion processes and who's involved with that. Will those systems transfer in? The retention, which is going to speak to culture and how the business has been set up, and patient education. Are they there for the chiropractic versus the chiropractor? Team and team building, and the culture of having longstanding great team members, especially if you have associate doctors, like you said, that come with the deal. Man, that's the sexiest thing going, right? Yeah. Making sure that you've got great associate doctors, because now somebody's buying a business, not your job, right? So, when doctors go from build to scale, when they go from being that owner operator who's the sole practitioner delivering all the care, and they go and they move into scale where they've brought in multiple providers, like whether that's partners or associate doctors, more typically associate doctors, that's when the job grows up and becomes a business, and people will compete to buy that business, right? So, Crystal, this has been fantastic. We're very much in line. As always, I appreciate your insights and wisdom. Progressive Practice Sales is a trusted partner of ours. It'll be definitely the experts that handle the third step in that 4-step process of exit. We're going from the strategic to the readiness to the go-to-market to the actual transaction. You guys are experts for the go-to-market elements. And, I love the concept that businesses aren't bought, they're sold. You have to sell your business, right? So we're trying to get these doctors ready to actually sell their business and create greater asset value so that they can leverage, not only corporate structures that will get them a better, higher price, but also tax strategies that'll help them keep as much of that profit as possible, as opposed to passing it along to Washington, right? So, Crystal, thank you so much. I appreciate you. How do we find you? How do we get in touch with you and your people?
Yeah, well, I think the easiest thing to do is to go to progressivepracticesales.com, and we've got a wealth of information on there, as well as some places that people can download guides and whatnot. So we'd certainly love to help you and your group achieve those sale goals.
Thank you so much. All right, guys. All right. So you guys know what the world needs now is chiropractic, and what chiropractic needs right now is more successful chiropractors. I'm Dr. Stephen Franson for the Remarkable CEO Podcast.
Please stick around for more business insights from this week's bonus interview with our Remarkable Success Partner, dedicated to helping you more successfully help more people. Enjoy.
Hey everyone, Dr. Adrian from the Remarkable Practice, and I'm super excited because I have here with me Dr. David Fletcher from CLA. Welcome, Dr. David. How are you this morning?
Oh, Dr. Adrian, I am so good, and thank gosh it's the evening for me, and here we are together once again. Fantastic.
I know. I was like super excited to know that we were going to jump on a call together and we were going to talk about all things CLA, because for me, this is tech that we've been using in our practice. I actually think it might be kind of close to 10 years. And then obviously, with that 10-year-old tech, we were using the old tech, and now we have bought the new tech. which is unbelievably exciting. We love it. It's been so transformative to our practice. But before we kind of get into all of those kind of details, why don't you just give us a bit of a background, tell us a bit about yourself, CLA, and how this all kind of came to life.
Yeah, well, obviously, our relationship with TRP is based upon our love of chiropractic and I'm a chiropractor. I guess that's the best thing I can say. And when I was in my middle years in practice, and we had always run a very, very productive practice, I started to recognize that I wanted to add technologies outside of the X-ray system that would allow us to look into the nervous system. And as a consequence of that, I started to develop at the same time as Dr. Kent and Jen Temple were working with the original Insight Subluxation Station, I started to develop protocols that were valuable for everybody into the profession as far as integrating the Insight or scanning technologies. And from that role, which was, 27, 28 years ago, CLA has become pretty much the dominant force in technological examinations within this profession. And it's really an honor for me to sort of represent, and I own the company, but it also means that I get a chance to represent the message that we put out there. And so when I get a chance to work with TRP, but especially on this type of conversation, we get a chance to talk to CEOs. I just want them to know that this is one of the most exciting conversations I get to have, because we're speaking to the true tribe that we all live in.
Yeah, beautiful. So tell me about that then. When we look at kind of the CEO, I guess the thing that's in the back of their mind, or the question that they ask themselves at least, is when I'm looking to invest, right? I'm going to invest some money into the practice, right? I obviously want a return on investment. I'd thought about this over the last couple of days, and I really think there's not many other products out there where you could invest money and it give you a return across all areas of the practice. Not only attraction, right, in the ability for the technology to be used with scanning. So whether we're doing external marketing with screenings and things like that, and how we can use it in that format, but also when it comes to obviously the conversion process, right? And actually, helping people understand what is the actual problem, and we have an objective measure. And then through the retention process, which is continuing to, I guess, to test and to re-examine and use that Hawthorne effect, where we're actually asking them to engage in their care and do specific things, and we're going to measure the effect of those things. But then team building, because I know for us in our practice, we actually have tech CAs using the technology. This is something that the DCs don't actually use. So talk to me a little bit about that, like in its application. How can the CEO think about this with a return on the investment?
Yeah, I think that as a CEO, and we're looking at two ROI components, which are, I would say, efficiency and stickiness. You don't want to invest in something and then find out that it's throwing off the efficiencies of the system you have. You want to build new efficiencies into the system. And at the same time, you want to see the stickiness, which means that it not only gives you what you thought it did, but it gives this ability to have an expansion of value to your product or your services. And so when we built this system, we knew that we had to have a design that was going to immediately get a wow factor. We knew that we had to catch the attention, not only of the chiropractor, obviously, but of the client that they're working with, which means that we needed to produce reports that were understandable and available for them to understand. Neurology is very difficult to understand for doctors, let alone for patients. So it has to be dumb stupid for us to take it out there and say, this is what is going on. And because of that, we started to develop really, really, really strategic models in which we wanted to communicate. We weren't going to take people on some diverse conversation that wasn't about their, was about their nervous system they didn't understand. We wanted them to go beyond feeling and understand function, because the nervous system, although it never stops learning, it has to learn efficiently. Now, that's what we know, but we need to tell them that. Yeah. And so we had to make, with the driving force of this technology, we had to make the invisible visible. And we've done a great job of that. As you said, with this newer technology, we have an intuitive reporting system, which means that we actually take the data that is being collected from scanning the nervous system and actually build the report individualized to that patient based on their data, which is fantastic. To make it super easy, we aggregate the data that's coming from the different instruments and put a single score out there so that the patient has a neural efficiency index, meaning that they from a reporting perspective efficiently. If you wanted to, you could just say, hey, you've moved from a B+ to an A, and your body systems are working at a top end, or listen, you're hovering down at a C and it's not a good way to live, so let's keep it going up. So it's a report card, if you will, that goes along with that. And I think that when we talk about the stickiness of it, it means that there's this sense that it's going to be part of their culture, but part of each person's folio, not from day 1 to day 2, but for the entire life cycle of that patient. And so that's where retention and the referral model comes very much into the ROI model. You and I were just chatting a little bit beforehand, and we refer to it as a ripple effect, meaning the attraction especially. Yeah. So we know that when someone starts into in and under care, the only priority is themselves, meaning they want to feel and they want to experience what it is that is the benefit to them. But in a very short period of time, and as little as 4 to 5 visits, when they start to feel better, you want to then show them that they are functioning differently and better too. And the value of that is you don't want them to just have a conversation with people that have back pain or have headaches or otherwise. You want to begin a well child checkup for their family members. You want to have a well person checkup for their friends. You want them to understand that it's a great way to analyze and be preventative, predictive, and promotive towards the performance of the nervous system. So that's the ripple effect. You start to, change the lives as it ripples out.
Yeah. And one of the other things that CEOs always have their eyes on are metrics, right?
Yeah.
Really, for them is going to be that snapshot of how the practice is performing and functioning. So I think, like, for me, I look at that and go, okay, there's an investment at the front end. How do I measure the success of one of those investments, right? I'd look at things like, okay, so attraction, when we're using the Insight Subluxation Station, how do our screenings attract new clients now compared to how they did before, right? We can measure it there. If we look at our conversion percentage, right, we know in the TRP model, we want a 75 to 80% conversion.
Absolutely.
Right? We look at that conversion percentage and say, well, what was it before? What is it now using the tech? Right? When we look at friends and families referral, like how many internal referrals were we getting using a friends and family check now compared to what it used to be before? We can go through a million metrics: R4 stick rate, R4 re-sign rate, R5 stick rate, R5 re-sign rate. But I think that's kind of where we get to measure to really see what's the impact of using this kind of technology in the practice.
Yeah, and built into that new system, which we call Synapse, which is what you're using right now, Adrian, is a dashboard, which allows you to look at some KPIs that are associated directly with the scanning. And I think one of the most important KPIs for any of us to look at is the exam to exam to exam ratios, if you will, meaning it's always very easy to do new patient exams. And let's just say that's what comes out of a screening or something of that nature. But in that same patient, we can begin to track them. And if we have 12 visit cycles, we can then develop OVA, PVAs out of this whole relationship that goes along with them. Well, one of the things we do know is that when we compare the PVA of people that have originated a spine first approach, which very, very traditional for what we were all taught, palpate fixations, take an x-ray, do some motion palpation, set up a care plan. How do you feel? Let's get you past the range of motion issues. How do you feel? Okay, then, you should check in with me once a month and we'll see you forever until you don't like us anymore. Well, when we build this relationship with them that's talking about having a care plan based on improving the functions and watching you every step of the way, you have the confidence to go, look, we're changing function, but at the deepest level in your neurofunctional level. And as a result of that, we're going to put together a 12-week plan that associates with 3 to 4 of these re-exams that are going to go on 12-month plan, whatever your choice is. But there's a roadmap for them that's based on exam to exam to exam findings and reports.
Yeah. You know what? Like, I even kind of think all the way back at the front end, even like the tech's amazing and the reporting's amazing and how we build that into progress checkpoints and so forth. But like, I just go all the way back at the front end and go philosophically, right? Let's go back to our why. Okay. There is nothing more congruent than the tech with our why, right? So, again, the way the CEO is going to think about it is think about, okay, so is this tech congruent with what I believe in chiropractic is it congruent with the vision story or the vision of success that I have for my practice? And I'm like, that's like a drop the mic moment, because there's nothing more congruent in practice than using this tech for the CEO's vision for what they deem success to be like, and the chiropractic philosophy.
No question. And, you know, when you start to delve into what we refer to as a nerve first approach versus a spine first approach, it doesn't dismiss the spine at all.
All right.
In fact, we absolutely endorse the use of X-ray, as it is complementary. It's just that we don't get caught in sort of an old rhetoric, which is bone out is pinching a nerve and causing a problem. In fact, what we talk about is the ability of the nervous system to adapt. Look at your X-ray. You've been under stress for so long that even the hardest tissues of your body were failing in the way they adapt. And so, you know, it ties together the whole bigger picture that says you will live a longer, healthier, and happier life with less nerve interference. So let's get at that, and let's talk to you about all the other strategies that could complement what I'm doing. And you become, you know, centric to the concept of not just being a therapist in this model, but being a foundational element in anybody's health. And the joy of using scanning is that we've designed the technology so that every part of the technology is available for newborns and forward, meaning that it's not age dependent, because the nervous system has to be assessed from a newborn right through to a super senior. And we know the most, honestly, with this, and that's, I mean, I speak to TRP here, but we're brethren in this process, that the most successful practices are the ones that can communicate through the family to the community. And you never feel dismissed for a moment if you are running a centric TRP style, you know, neurologically functional model based on the subluxation. You will always be busy, you know, busier than you know what to do with. Always.
Exactly. So how do people get in contact with you guys? What's the next kind of step?
Well, we're going to put on the notes here, or in type of embedded in here, is an actual TRP landing page, which actually will solidify some really special pricing that we have always had. We have a love affair with TRP and vice versa. But while you're waiting for us to put that up, and if you're listening to this, we have a very, very robust website, which is called insightcla.com. Insightcla.com has 4 journeys in it that have been specially curated for whether you're a student, or whether you are coming in as a new grad, or whether you are an active practitioner, or a seasoned veteran who has our technologies already. And each one of those speaks to you differently. And we have a dedicated TRP rep who is available at Australian times, and is very clearly capable of giving you a demo, just so everybody knows we're mission focused, meaning we're a mission driven company. You should not feel obligated or feel under any threatening pressure. There's no salesmanship in this process. We in TRP agree on that, is that this is informed and inspired conversation. So if you want to learn more about it, get in touch with the rep and take it to the next level. There are also huge amounts of resources on the website. Just go in, click an ebook, you know, do whatever you want. It's all free.
Yeah, absolutely. And then there's obviously immersions. You guys are always at the immersions.
We always are at immersions. Yeah.
Man, great conversations happen there. Like for existing docs, troubleshooting anything, for new docs wanting to find out about the tech. Like it is one of the most sexiest tools you can have in your practice. Like seriously, like we love
with the new iPad. Love it. Oh my gosh, it's fantastic. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, but I get so excited about it. We put so much, we put so much love into that, but what we were able to do, and I don't think you even know this, but we have grown to such a size within the profession that we are collecting somewhere around 6 million scans a year into our servers, which is massive, which means that there are millions and millions of people that are using our technology, or that are having scans in our technology. And one of the things that we know is that we hold some of the most rich deposits of data, and we are using data scientists to try and help us understand the trends that are occurring within chiropractic. I can tell you this without going too far deeply into it, is that chiropractic works so spectacularly that if you're not looking into the nervous system, you're missing the point of it. Meaning, if we all care so much about how a person or patient feels, but what we really need to know is, are we doing the job of making their lives more complete? And when you look at the scan data as we have it, it makes you almost shake and shiver to see the impact that chiropractic has. So my moments of parting comments are, we are fantastic at what we do, show the world, and use the insight to help you do that.
Man, I don't think I have anything else to say. That was like, what a way to finish. That's so good. Anyway, it's so great to spend this time with you, Dr. David. It's always a pleasure. I love what you guys do. For CEOs that don't have the tech, you need to jump on the website. I'm sure it's posted down here somewhere. There's a landing page just for TRP docs. There's special pricing. Start the conversation. Find out more about insight subluxation. It is the most congruent technology with our philosophy, with our vision for success. The team loves it. Like, patients love it, and we get to kind of use this through all domains of our practice. So I can't endorse it more. So great to spend time with you, and we'll look forward to seeing you next time that we're either online together or at a member.
Well, instead of Zoom, we'll do this in person. That sounds much better to me.
All right, take care.
Catch you well. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Remarkable CEO Podcast. Remember, what the world needs now is chiropractic. And what chiropractic needs now is more successful chiropractors. If you like this podcast, please subscribe, share with a friend, and leave us a review. And if you'd like to connect with us personally, direct message us on Facebook, LinkedIn, or Instagram. Now go and be remarkable.